This is CBC Vancouver News.
It's hard to say that they necessarily lied to us, but I definitely feel lied to.
A new report says money problems were part of SFU's decision to shut down its football program. But that's not what it told players.
The Grizzly had a very different vibe. It actually felt quite scary to see it.
Very close to town. A grizzly bear spent some time near Quesnel. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. The son of a prominent Sikh BC leader shot dead outside a Surrey Gurdwara says he is relieved after the Prime Minister announced today that security officials have credible evidence the government of India may have played a role in his father's killing.
It's a sigh of relief in a sense for the family and the Sikh community here. It's because from day one we kind of already had this idea and knowledge that, if anything would happen to him, the Indian government would be involved.
45-year-old Hardeep Singh Nijars was an activist campaigning for an independent Sikh state known as Khalistan. In June, 2 gunmen shot him to death as he sat in his truck in the Gurdwara parking lot. It sparked outrage in the Sikh community and triggered several protests around the world. Speaking just steps from where his father was killed, 21-year-old Balraj Nijjar says he was surprised by the Prime Minister's announcement. He thanks to the federal leaders who've spoken and wants more from Ottawa.
My message to Mr. Trudeau is, firstly, like I said before, I want to thank you that, you recognize that there is foreign interference in the murder of my father. But we, the family, the community, the Gurdwara committee, and Sikhs all around the world believe this is not the end. We expect more from you. This is just the first step in the overall plan, we believe. Hopefully there's sanctions, trade talks, hopefully they stop. We need to put pressure on India. You can't just come to a foreign country and kill a citizen who's speaking against you, because there's nothing wrong about that.
Nijjar was speaking at a vigil outside the Gurdwara, which is held on the 18th of every month to mark his father's killing on June 18th. For its part, the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says Nijjar's death remains a priority. The allegations against the Indian government are reverberating across Canada and parts of the world. Tonight, the government of India has announced it's expelling a senior Canadian diplomat after Canada ordered a top Indian official out of this country. It's especially powerful, though, in Surrey, where Hardeep Nijjar lived and died. Lindsay Duncombe has that part of the story.
The people who worshipped with Hardeep Singh Nijjar had been shouting accusations India was responsible for his death for months now. The Prime Minister's announcement didn't spark celebration here.
Until we actually see people behind bars, until we see actually people that were, supplying, money for this hit, carrying this out, I think it's kind of like skepticism right now that as if something's actually going to happen.
Canada knew that this was all happening and didn't intervene as per their fiduciary duty. It takes our leader to be killed for a morsel of acknowledgement.
The man India labeled a terrorist was known at his Gurdwara as an activist, leading the fight for a free Sikh state. Nijjar's death, the latest violent chapter in the long-standing and divisive fight for Khalistan, a fight this former BC Premier says Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has picked a side in.
There's a perception that Mr. Trudeau has been politically in bed with the Khalistani elements for his own political reasons. Not the violent elements, but the separatist elements.
And there was praise for the Prime Minister.
Finally, somebody that stand with Sikhs, right? And we appreciate the way what he did, right? What he said, right?
Current Premier David Eby says he was deeply disturbed and angered, adding Canadians across the country must be safe from the interference of foreign governments, including being targeted for threats or physical harm, including murder. These activists say Nijjar's death sparked fear.
It was just a deep scarring moment, I think, for the Sikh community in Canada, and also for the generation of activists that's still coming, that the reality of what we're speaking out about may lead to our death even in this country.
Sikh separatists say Canada's move today will intensify, give energy to their global fight, one that is expected to continue with rallies and town halls here in British Columbia later this month. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Surrey.
After years of debate and public consultation, laneway homes are coming to Burnaby. Homeowners can apply to build one as of today. More now from the CBC's Michelle Gomez.
When we realized that we'd have the opportunity to put the laneway house here, we've just kept this clear so that we're ready to go when we get approved.
This Burnaby property belongs to Aunt Leah's Foundation. It houses vulnerable mothers who are at risk of losing their children to foster care. The group has been waiting for city approval to add a laneway home.
The need is there and it's so important, but being able to add potentially room for 3 families to this particular development is really great.
The new home will have space for up to 3 moms and their children.
They love that they can come here for unconditional support, everything from bonding with their babies to life skills to education.
Makiko Ara also plans to build a laneway home on her Burnaby property.
It is exciting that the city is sort of opening this up. I mean, if I look, if you drive down any laneway in Vancouver, you see all these cute little houses and, there's families that are living in there. So I think it's going to change the dynamic of the city in Burnaby, and I think it'll be a positive thing.
Once her laneway house is built, the lot will be able to house up to 10 people. Experts say this gentle densification is much needed in Burnaby, which has half the population density of Vancouver. Burnaby's approval of laneway homes comes 14 years after Vancouver made the shift.
I think roles of policies when it comes to laneway homes and basement suites or secondary suites have a consistency throughout the region, and that it isn't just a ragtag policy.
Yan says some Burnaby residents had concerns about parking, densification, and firefighting access, and he says laneway homes just weren't a priority for previous governments.
This does and will open a certain stock of rental housing, particularly for families, ones that don't necessarily fit in a studio or 1 bedroom in a tower.
In a statement, the Ministry of Housing says it's planning to make secondary suites, including laneway homes, legal this fall throughout the province. Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Vancouver.
Changes are coming to the province's drug decriminalization pilot project. Leaders at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention were told that could happen this fall. The possession of small amounts of drugs was decriminalized in January. Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry says the province is starting to look at changes to those rules.
With any new initiative, there's a period of adjustment, and that's where we're in right now. We're listening to communities, we're hearing what the issues are that are coming up out of this, and we're going to make adjustments.
Municipalities were told drug use could be restricted in more places. This comes as a ban on drug possession near playgrounds is now in effect. Some leaders say the province needs to give them more supports to cope with public drug use in smaller communities. 5 months after Simon Fraser University announced it was shutting down its varsity football team, a special advisor's report into that decision says money was a major factor, despite what officials told players. In April, players and alumni were stunned when SFU President Joy Johnson announced the long-running football team was being axed, citing ongoing uncertainty after an NCAA division the team played in was dropping the squad next year. At the time, the university's senior athletics director, Teresa Hansen, told players the decision was not financially motivated and called the process to join another conference very complex. Today, though, the independent report says the department overseeing SFU varsity sports has major money problems, a $1.7 million deficit if the team played this year. It says there is no clear path for SFU football to start playing again in Canada or the U.S. At best, it could try to join the Canada West Conference, but would need exemptions. At least one former player wants more clarity on why they shut his team down.
We were told quite simply that money was not an issue or a reason for any of this happening. And the report makes it pretty clear that money was definitely an issue already. Even if it wasn't the reason for football canceling, it has definitely been a struggle for the department as a whole. It's hard to say that they necessarily lied to us, but I definitely feel lied to.
5 players did seek a court injunction to reinstate the team, but that was denied. Several high-profile alumni, including BC Lions great Louis Pasaglia, have demanded their names be removed from the university's Sports Hall of Fame. And a pledge drive led by BC Lions owner Amar Doman has raised almost $800,000 to help save the program. The report says there are difficulties in moving to another league, specifically the Canada West Conference. The head of Football Canada says it's a straightforward decision based on economics, the structure they have in place now, and competition, saying SFU would do well where they are competitively.
They have a region that they can recruit from. So they have the region of the Fraser Valley, of the suburbs in Vancouver, and then into other reaches in BC, where kids, quite frankly, in some cases, would not be looking at a UBC. So there is an area there that they can serve, and there's a conference and a competition that they can play in.
An SFU official says they need time to digest the report. They would not explain why they told players money was not an issue when the report says it was. Vancouver Island MLA Adam Walker has been removed from the NDP caucus after a human resources complaint, but the government says it is not a criminal matter.
This was not a sexual harassment complaint against Mr. Walker. There are no allegations, to the best of my knowledge, at all that he was involved in anything criminal. This is an internal human resources complaint that was brought forward by an employee.
That unspecified complaint was raised in July, and an internal investigation found misconduct on Walker's part. While he's hopeful the issue will be resolved, he says rejoining the New Democrats is not up to him.
I'm hoping that through arbitration my name can be cleared, and beyond that it'll be up to Premier Eby whether he would like to see me back in caucus or not. I was elected by the people of my community, and they put me there to get things done, and I'm going to keep doing that.
Walker has represented the Parksville-Qualicum riding for the past 3 years. He'll now sit as an independent. Over 400 active fires are still burning across BC, and dozens of properties are now under evacuation orders and alerts after strong winds blew through. In Peachland, the Glen Lake wildfire is growing quickly. Evac orders were issued for 8 recreational properties, and 204 more properties are on alert. On the Sunshine Coast, there's a local state of emergency because of the Clawholm Lake wildfire. 10 properties northeast of Seashill, near the top of Salmon Inlet, are under evacuation order. 28 properties are on evacuation order in the Horn Lake area in the Caribou District, and the nearby Hell Raving Creek blaze has grown to 114 square kilometers. People in Quesnel were doing double takes on Saturday after a grizzly bear was spotted just minutes from the city center. Black bears are a common sight in the town this time of year, but grizzlies are rather rare. One local photographer decided to capture the moment.
I saw on Facebook that there was a grizzly in our neighborhood, but I didn't know if it was real or fake news. So I was just kind of pondering this, ran back in the house and grabbed my camera and drove, not walked, to see if we could see the grizzly, and we saw it in someone's yard. A bit of shock at first, like, yeah, it's really here. And it was actually quite unsettling because, like, we're so used to seeing all these black bears everywhere. They just almost become comical, just how many there are. But the grizzly had a very different vibe. Like it actually felt quite scary to see it. And it was more skittish. Like you could tell it wasn't used to like being in town like the black bears are. I was right in the front yard of someone's house and kept walking around the tree, climbing up, like standing up, reaching down. And I posted the photos, and I feel like once people saw those photos, like the traffic in Johnson South was heavy all day. Like people were coming to see if they could get a look at it. There was hundreds of likes and lots of comments, and it created a lot of excitement around the bear for sure.
Still with animals, shelters across our province are facing a growing crisis. Many are full, and for the first time, some are considering euthanasia to make space for more rescues. The problem has been fueled by the post-pandemic lifestyle patterns, inflation, and rising costs. Janella Hamilton found a weekend fundraiser, though, trying to ease the burden.
Make sure your dog is hydrated.
Susan Patterson has been rescuing animals for 15 years. She says within that time, she's never seen so many dogs in need of forever homes. And city-owned shelters and pounds are struggling to keep up with demand.
In 2014, I think in all 7 animal shelters here in British Columbia, I think they had 4 dogs under 35 pounds. between all 7 shelters, and now all of those shelters are full.
Patterson believes the influx of animals being surrendered and strays being found on the street or tied up in parks is largely due to the pandemic and the growing affordability crisis in BC.
People didn't anticipate that they wouldn't have the time for the dogs that they had the time for during COVID. You know, the housing problem is a huge issue. People can't afford the apartments they were living in that were dog friendly. Now they have to move to places that are not dog friendly.
Patterson, along with dozens of other animal rescuers and their supporters, put paws to pavement Saturday to raise awareness and money. Dogs of all breeds and ages coming out to support the cause, taking much-needed water breaks along the 4-kilometer walk. For some, it was a chance to enjoy scenic Spanish banks. Social media influencer and animal rescuer Lee Asher was also on hand for puppy cuddles and photos with fans.
When you adopt a dog, you save a life, but more importantly, you're able to give an animal an opportunity to truly be themselves, to be able to be free and not live in fear or in a cage.
The rising cost of living not only impacting animals here. 2-year-old Eduardo was rescued from a high-kill shelter in Los Angeles.
I just got back from LA and it is horrible there. Like 300 people a day are leaving the state, and a lot of them are leaving their animals behind.
Patterson hopes events like this encourage more people to consider adopting rather than buying from a breeder.
Try to find dogs that have been left behind and have nowhere to go.
Giving animals like these a second chance at life. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Not everyone is benefiting from restorative nature.
A new tool is being developed to help identify the best green spaces in Vancouver, but they're not all created equal. We'll tell you why after this. Thank you for joining our commercial-free live stream tonight. This past weekend, dozens of BC migrants and their supporters joined protesters in cities across Canada to renew calls for improved rights and protections for migrant workers and undocumented people. Hardeep Singh Nijars spoke with demonstrators marching through Vancouver.
The call for change is growing louder. Waishan Kwa is a spokesperson for Migrant Students United at SFU. He says in 2021, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised a new regularization program for undocumented people, migrant students, workers, and refugees. 2 years later, advocates say no program has been implemented.
A lot of us here are, international students, migrant workers, farm workers, care workers, and we're all in this immigration system together.
Advocates say because of their temporary immigration status, thousands of migrants in Canada suffer from poverty and exploitation, living here amid constant fear of detention and deportation, unsafe living and working conditions, and a lack of access to adequate health care.
Being here without immigration status means not being able to access health care, means not being able to access education, it means not being able to access employment standards, and it means living in fear of detention and deportation every day.
The renewed call for change comes one day before Parliament is set to reconvene. For demonstrators, it's a time to remind the Prime Minister to follow through on his promise and make migrant issues a priority.
Tomorrow, they're going back to the cabinet and then they're going to talk about this. We want them to talk about migrant workers' status for all now.
The countrywide demonstrations come after Canada's temporary foreign worker program was labelled a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery by a United Nations official earlier this month. According to advocates, there are currently about 1.7 million people in Canada who are on temporary permits.
Agriculture production, industrial production, transportation, all the logistic industry, taxis, Uber, all these, they are worked mostly by migrants, even healthcare workers.
Advocates say they have waited long enough. It's time for government to act swiftly and implement permanent change.
No more programs, no more pilots. We want status for all immediately.
Hardeep Singh Nijars, CBC News, Vancouver.
Spending time in nature can improve your mental health, something researchers say is founded in science. Now UBC has created a new tool to help identify the best green spaces in Vancouver. But as Yasmin Khanea reports, not all of them are created equal.
Dunbar, Southlands, Kerrisdale, and I would say Westbourne Grey as well.
UBC researchers have mapped out green spaces across Vancouver and found there are better spots that support mental well-being in the west side of the city compared to the east.
The problem with this unequal distribution is that not everyone is benefiting from restorative nature.
Research suggests nature offers serious mental health benefits and reduces stress.
A fresh air, the peace of mind, it's just so nice and beautiful.
I just like the quiet and the stillness. Connecting to what is around me a little bit and just getting away from all the noise and everything else going on.
UBC researchers have found some green spaces are better for mental health and well-being than others based on qualities like the diversity of trees and green canopy coverage, which are associated with positive feelings and an easing of stress. They say Camosun Bog is a good example.
The sense of refuge, you see the close canopy, the density of trees. They give you the sensation that you are protected, you're safe.
Neighborhoods in the west, such as Shaughnessy and West Point Grey, ranked the highest based on the criteria, while Strathcona was among the lowest and considered vulnerable.
The way we calculated vulnerability included income, but not only. It also included housing stability, so if people would rent a house or own a house, employment rate, financial stability.
Experts in nature and well-being say the findings could help city planners identify inequities.
The issue with green spaces and how they're distributed in cities is that often people with lower health status live closer to areas that don't have as much green space. So as much nature as we can cram into spaces, the better.
They hope people of different incomes, backgrounds, and ages can have equal access to green spaces so that they can all benefit from what nature has to offer. Yasmin Khanea, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live shot of Burrard Inlet facing the North Shore. Slightly cooler these days, and we are set for some precipitation. Darius Madavi will have your cooler, wetter BC forecast right after this.
No, that's not me. That's Stan Orchard, a government herpetologist who is on the firing line in what seems to be a losing battle against the invasion of the dreaded American bullies. They're giant frogs who, rumor has it, were dropped here a few years ago by a disgruntled frog farmer who went broke. Stan's trying to catch one for us.
There's one scoop. You'd expect 99% mortality in the tadpole stage. That's why they produce so many tens of thousands of eggs. But here, there's tremendous survivorship, so the numbers of adults are going to increase rapidly.
And because so many survive, they will dominate the other species in the area. This guy could grow up to be 60 centimeters in length. Trying to find the big ones is tough. You have to kind of sneak up on them.
You'll hear some loud splashes as we walk down to the edge of the lake. They'll jump in, and it's an alarm system for the other frogs.
There's a few here, but they don't want to cooperate.
Why didn't we find any today? It was sunspots. I'm not sure. Today we went out and looked for them during the day. I was out here last night, and at night it's the best time to go out and searching for them. They're very wary.
Don't despair. I promised myself at the beginning of this item to show you a big frog. And here it is. This monster is from South Africa and weighs about 8 pounds. His owner was trying to enter him in a California frog jumping contest. The frogs we're looking for will be about half this size. According to Stan Orchard, the population explosion when the American bullies hatch could be tremendous. All these people, like the ones in the movie Jaws, just don't know what's coming. But they have been warned.
Although the bullfrogs seem to be extremely camera shy, there's no doubt that they are there. They're right over there, growing by the minute and the hour, just waiting to take over. Bob Gillingham, CBC News at Beaver Lake.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. With the changes to how Canada is able to access journalism online and on social media, we want to assure you that when you're looking for CBC News, you'll always be able to find us. Wherever you are in BC, local news, breaking stories, and the latest from around the world is at your fingertips any time of the day with the free CBC News app and online at cbcnews.ca. Download the CBC News app and stay connected wherever you are.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
CBC's science and climate specialist Darius Madavi has our BC-wide weather forecast on a decidedly cooler day across our big province, eh?
That's right, yes. And it couldn't have come at a better time because we've had some fairly major fire activity happening over the weekend. So these cooler temperatures, maybe a bit of rain coming tomorrow, or certainly a bit of rain coming tomorrow, will definitely help because these temperatures are here to stay at least for another few days, because tomorrow we're looking pretty much the same as we were today. You can see some places actually coming down a bit further. So we're in the teens throughout the southern interior, some places low teens. So the Kootenays and Columbia is going to see temperatures come way down. And here on the coast, we're seeing similar temperatures. Inland going to be same as by the water here in Vancouver. And across the island, we see nice cool temperatures, a little bit below or at seasonal across the province. So it's starting to feel like fall, and with fall comes that rainfall. So starting tomorrow, we can see that rain start to come through and hit parts of the south coast and lower mainland, but it's not until the afternoon it makes its way likely to Vancouver. And then it gets heavy at times. Hopefully we'll get some pretty significant rainfall. You can see we will get a fairly good amount, at least in some places. The exact locations could switch a bit, but even throughout the Fraser Valley, looks like we're going to be getting at least some rain for many areas across the south coast. But then by Wednesday, we dry up once again as we head into another sunny and dry stretch, although temperature is not coming up too much, looking pretty similar to where we're at now. So if we zoom out to the whole province, that's pretty much what we see across BC. We can see that this rainfall comes and makes its way south and fills pretty much across the province. So some places will see lower chances than others. The Kelowna, Kamloops, lower chance, but likely to still see some scattered showers in parts of the Okanagan and Thompson. And that's what we see here, really just the northeast that is staying dry, just some cloud there. But for everywhere else, at least a chance of showers. In some places, they will be heavy. So could be good news for fire activity, especially because it's not expected to come with much wind. And so here we see that drying happening, but we will be thankful for those showers tomorrow. I will, at least.
I will too. Thanks, Darius.
Thanks, Dan.
That is your late news for Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.